Israel is facing condemnation for an airstrike on a school in Gaza, which it says was a mission to eliminate militants hiding among civilians.
The strike killed more than 90 people and wounded many more, and is fueling concerns that Israel isn't committed to ending the war in Gaza. Matthew Doran has more now from Jerusalem.
The airstrike early on Saturday morning targeted a school where local authorities said thousands of people were seeking refuge after losing their homes during the war in Gaza. The Israeli Defence Force says it has identified 19 militants who were killed in the attack, citing that as justification for the airstrike. The IDF insisting that this was a targeted strike, that the damage and the number of dead and wounded reported by the Palestinian authorities is out of step with what it actually did. In other words, the scale of the destruction seen at the school, the severity of the injuries that are being reported, with local authorities saying bodies were simply torn apart by the blast, cannot have occurred as a result of the IDF's actions. It has to be said that the scenes emerging from Gaza City tell a very different story, and it is not clear that Israel's allies, its neighbours, its partners around the world are exactly buying that explanation. The White House has said it is deeply concerned by the loss of civilian life as a result of this airstrike. The UK Foreign Secretary has said the British government is appalled by what it has seen coming out of Gaza, and a number of Arab countries have also condemned this attack. Egypt chief among them, a country that is trying to broker some sort of ceasefire and hostage deal between Israel and Hamas, saying that this attack draws into question whether Israel has the political will to try to bring an end to the war in Gaza. Hamas has described this attack as a serious escalation of the conflict, and certainly ahead of those talks that are due to be held later this week in either Doha or Cairo, trying to reach some sort of deal, this incident will play into those considerations. Palestinian health authorities say that in the period since the war began back in October, almost 40,000 Palestinians have been killed.
Alexandra Saieh is the head of humanitarian policy and advocacy at the Save the Children International. She says recovery efforts at the school are ongoing.
I spoke to my colleagues this morning and they told me that bodies were still being pulled under the rubble of this destroyed school. Families are literally picking up pieces of dismembered family members in plastic bags. There are reports of upwards of 100 people reportedly killed, but it's so difficult to verify because, again, people are essentially picking up body parts. Schools in Gaza continue to come under attack. This is likely the deadliest attack on a school that we've seen since October, but we're seeing Israeli airstrikes on schools nearly every week now. And remember, these families are in these schools because they have nowhere else to go. They're serving as shelters for families who have lost their homes. Unfortunately, what we're seeing is that schools in Gaza are no longer places of learning for children. They're places where children are being killed, they're being dismembered, they're being maimed, they're being burnt alive. And the international community has normalized this by not demanding any sort of accountability, not stopping the flow of weapons, and not pushing the parties to agree to a ceasefire.
And Alexandra, in the past, when there have been these types of really harrowing instances, the Israeli forces have said that they've been seeking out particular players from Hamas and other groups. Is there any sense of what they're saying of why this happened?
Look, that's not something I'm able to verify, but what I know is that there were children, women, and civilians in this location, in this school. And this is not the first time that we've seen attacks like this that have led to so many civilian casualties. And we're seeing time and time again explosive weapons being used in incredibly densely populated areas. Remember, Gaza's population is nearly half made up of children, and using these weapons is essentially like using massive bombs during rush hour in a in a big city, populated city like DC or London. So this is why we're seeing so many children and so many civilians being killed. on a regular basis.
And in fact, an Israeli military spokesperson said this morning that this school had, quote, served as an active Hamas and Islamic Jihad military facility. What do you say to that?
Look, what we know is that children are being killed every single day in Gaza. We're seeing attacks like this all the time. And it is children who are suffering the most. It is children that suffer in almost every conflict the most. What we're seeing is absolutely no accountability, a complete disregard for international law. And, you know, it's not only that children are more susceptible to being killed by explosive weapons than adults, but they're also dying from other things like malnutrition, dehydration, disease due to the continued obstruction of humanitarian aid going into Gaza. And so what we need is for this war to end and for children to be able to given the opportunity to finally recover. That is there's no end in sight at this point, and we just need this to end.
And we are seeing there's repeated calls for a ceasefire and those renewed calls also for there to be a deal to release hostages. What do you see as the role of the international community in facilitating an end to what we've seen overnight?
The international community needs to use all their diplomatic tools that they have in their toolbox to agree to a ceasefire, to ensure the release of all the hostages, and to ensure that aid flows unobstructed to Gaza. We have not seen member states do everything that they can to stop this. And it is so urgent that we get a ceasefire. I mean, already in the last couple of weeks, there were traces of polio found in wastewater in Gaza, and this would be even more catastrophic for a place like Gaza. So we really need a ceasefire secured. It is imperative not only to stop these massive attacks on places like schools where children and families are sheltering, but to also allow aid organizations to address diseases that are breaking out across Gaza.
Alexandra Saieh, Head of Humanitarian Policy and Advocacy at Save the Children International, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.